Hello and welcome to Take Time. I'm your host, Patrick Marlett, and today we're talking about the Spinnaker Bradner. And if you are a fan of the channel, you'll know that I did a review on this very watch not that long ago, back in July of 2018. And that watch was so popular, it sold out so quickly. The brand wanted to reintroduce it, but not without a few improvements. And here we are today, 2019, with the Bradner, I'm going to say Mark II. And that's just my naming convention. On their website, this is labeled as the Bradner Automatic, as you can tell by the text on the dial. And of course, it is an auto-mechanical watch. So what exactly has changed with the Spinnaker Bradner Mark II? Well, before I get into all of that, I'd like to personally thank Anna and the team over at Spinnaker Watches for sending this piece in for review, and I'd also like to thank them for gifting it to the channel so I get to enjoy this on the daily. And of course, if you're wondering, it's going to impact my opinion highly. No, if you've seen any of the reviews here on the channel, you know it'll do no such thing. However, the Bradner has been a long-time favorite of mine from the brand, and this one has only gotten better. Now, of course, I'm going to start this review as I do all my reviews with the bad and then move on to the good before I give my final verdict on the new Mark II Bradner. Similarly to the Mark I version of this watch, the Bradner here is 42 millimeters in diameter. It's 50 millimeters from lug end to lug end, and you might notice that from our first video I measured it out to be 14 millimeters thick. It's more along the lines of 14.5 millimeters thick to the top of that crystal to the bottom of that case back. Although Spinnaker themselves state that this is 15 millimeters thick, I get 14.5. So you guys, you did a good job with the machining here. And the lug width is 20 millimeters on either or end. And similarly to the previous model, we have a 316L stainless steel case here with a waterproof, they say waterproof in some of their literature, and it says water resistant on the strap, but it will come with a water resistant leather strap. Nothing is ever truly waterproof. And on the inside, we have an NH35, again, very much like the Mark I. However, the difference here being an improved anti-reflective layering on the top sapphire crystal, as well as an improved water resistance to the case, that being 18 Atmos as opposed to the 15 of the previous Mark I. The Spinnaker 5062, that being its model number, will come in 5 separate flavors, all with different colored leather straps. Of course, there are 2 dial versions with this dark graphite gray dial. There are 2 blue dial variants, as well as an IP black with green dial version, the 5062-04. Despite which model you choose, the Spinnaker Bradner will come in at $285. Now, as you'll remember from our previous review of the Spinnaker Bradner, I initially received one that had a pre-scuffed crown and a handset that looked like it was cut from a model kit. Unlike the Mark I that I received last July, this unit has no such issues. The crowns are immaculate, and the handset themselves seems to be improved, not only how they were manufactured, but the loom itself. You'll notice that there's actually a larger loom area for the minute hand, and Spinnaker boasts that the loom on both the dial, handset, and inner rotating ring are all improved as well. Genuinely, there wasn't anything I truly disliked about the Mark I Bradner, aside from a few production mishaps. However, this one clears all of those things up and improves upon them. So aside from the improved loom and water resistance, what else has changed? Well, I mentioned it a moment ago, but the applied anti-reflective coating on the interior here is also said to be improved to allow for better visibility despite the lighting conditions. And aside from a studio light making it glaringly difficult to see it, well, it's pretty darn good in open sunlight. And they also improved the gearing here for the bidirectional inner turning bezel. Before, there might have been a little bit of lag with this unit, and there was also maybe some grit for some units. I've heard various complaints about the action here. This is phenomenal. I have no issues with this at all. Although I'll state with my Mark I, it was actually quite good itself. However, the action here is fantastic. It's really thick. There's no better way to describe it. The action here on the crown itself does take a decent bit of effort to move the crown, which is good, which is what you want, because when it's on the wrist, you don't want this simply moving about while you're wearing it, particularly as this doesn't lock down in any way, shape, or form. So it's nice that it does require a little bit of effort to get this to go around the dial. You might have noticed that I am glazing over any bad notes, and that's because There really aren't any to mention here. I think this is Spinnaker's best watch to date. I think this design is fantastic. I'd love to see them just make further improvements on this, make it thinner, add the Salida movement to this watch instead. I think this is a winning design from your brand. There aren't that many modern compressor diver cases out there within a reasonable price point, and you guys are really hitting the nail on the head with this design. It's fantastic. So on that note, why don't we just talk about some of the changes I've noticed between this model and the Mark I, and then move on to our good notes. And those changes are, aside from the ones I have already mentioned, the text at the 6 o'clock position. Now these next two notes are purely cosmetic, but if you own a Mark I or saw my previous review, you'll notice that the text down there is slightly enlarged, the automatic 600 feet, 180 meters text. I think that this works out a lot better with the dial. I think it balances very well with the Spinnaker text at the 12 o'clock and looks fantastic. I mean, there's very little to obstruct your view of that sunray finish on the dial, so I don't mind them enlarging that text, although you know how I feel about automatic being placed on the dial. It should be fairly obvious when you're looking at that seconds hand turn, but anyways, that's changed. And the minute hand itself. The minute hand is slightly shorter than it was before. The previous unit I owned actually reached that internal minute track. You see that at the edge of the dial interior, that minute track, it used to just touch that, where it comes just shy on these newer units. It's indifferent. I mean, there's nothing I feel needed to change with the previous minute hand, and there's nothing I feel need change here. It's a slightly different look, and you likely won't even notice it, but yeah, that's there. Again, it's not a major change, and I think it looks fine just as it is now. I know some folks are sticklers about their minute hands reaching the minute track and or at least brushing over the tips of the minutes. It somewhat aids legibility. However, I think the take here on the minute hand is just fine. It is at this point that I should mention the Spinnaker Bradner isn't currently available on Spinnaker's website. They are open to pre-orders now as of 3 days ago as of filming this video. You'll be able to purchase these at full retail come May 6th. Again, these are pre-ordering at $285, and I believe that price should be the same for the production units once they come out May 6th. One thing to note, though, is if you sign up for the pre-order, you'll get an Wahoo Tropic rubber strap, which is a $50 value from their website, included with your bundle. And of course, I don't have one of those straps in, so I'm not going to be able to commentate on the quality of that strap, but I do have this watch. And we might as well move on to all of the good points in regards to the Bradner. Now, it could just be me coming off of that Talker Air Defender review, but I think the scale here is perfect. Despite it being on the thicker side, something about the bauble of that glass and the way it appears, both in natural light and in the studio light, is just phenomenal. It looks really gorgeous. It's just a joy to look at and to have to read the time on the wrist. It's a very nice looking watch. There's no other way to put it. You know, I'm usually not a sucker for compressor style divers, but this one is really enjoyable, and I think it's indebted to how the sapphire crystal was formed. And here's what I'm talking about. You'll notice how the crystal wraps around the edges. It's like pseudo box, but it has more of a curve, and you'll notice how it bobbles the text on the dial as it reaches those outer extremities. It's just so enjoyable to look at. I mean, there's no other way to put it. This is a very fun watch, and that crystal is a large part of what makes this design fun, despite it adding just a little bit of height to the overall design. And while we're looking at the case, I mean, it was just as fine on the original model, but I forgot how well manufactured their Bradner cases are. I think the case here is fantastic, particularly for a watch sub $300. You know, you usually don't find this kind of manufacturing level of detail from a product that's within that price range, but you definitely get it here. And again, with the improved gearing on that secondary crown, you have a really swell product here. And something of note, I know folks like it when their logos perfectly sit upright. Mine does. Mine does right here. The Spinnaker sails are perfectly upright. The boat hasn't capsized. It's a good look for the logo on the crown. I don't think my Mark I it perfectly aligned. And of course, that's going to be a production thing. The crowns won't always perfectly align. So completely side note. Let me know if you guys care about in the comment section down below how your logo on the crown rest when screwed in. I know some folks go crazy over that, particularly Rolex owners. They seem to complain the most. But, I mean, they have a right to. But the crown here, just fine. So scaling, it's perfect. Just like the previous unit, this is meant to be a fun everyday beater in my opinion, and the scale for this piece is just fine, particularly again for a watch under $300. Also the NH35, excellent movement, no complaints there. It's been doing just fine in day-to-day use. Now, how about the luminosity of this dial and handset? They say it's improved. And you know what? I'm going to agree with them. It looks great. It's not difficult to read in dim lighting, and it holds its lume for a decent while. It's not the brightest lume I've ever seen, but it's still phenomenal on this watch, and I'll give credit where credit is due. They definitely did a good job of improving on that. Another great note is the leather strap. It's really great. I don't know if it's waterproof. It's certainly water resistant. They've treated these straps so that they can withstand a certain amount of water being splashed on them, and or you taking a swim and or a few laps around a pool. It should be fine on this strap. However, I'd probably switch this off for a rubber strap, or if you happen to pre-order this, that Oahu rubber strap, that's likely a better way to go. But the leather strap this comes with is an excellent match for the watch. They do a really good job of pairing their accessories with their watch heads, and this vintage style leather strap does look really good on the Bradner. It complements it perfectly, really. And you know, I normally wouldn't pick this odd moss green color tone for any watch I own, but when it comes stock standard on a Spinnaker Bradner, well, it looks pretty darn good. Again, I have a bunch of straps that I intend to put this on afterwards. However, I have been wearing it on this strap since receiving it, and I have to say, it's a really nice strap. Again, it's very stiff out of the packaging. This is one of those thicker straps that you're going to need to break in, but you'll notice that this has worn fairly well on my wrist. Rather, when we go to a wrist shot, you'll see it wraps around the wrist just fine. It doesn't do that thing where it like stands off your wrist because it's so thick. This actually, the break-in period was shorter, is what I'm saying, than your typical stiff leather strap, but this is just fine for a strap that comes equipped on a watch head. And lastly, I'll say it again, this is Spinnaker's best looking watch. In my personal opinion, this is the best watch they create. To me, it's unofficially their flagship model. I think this is the one folks get most excited over, and I know me personally, when they reached back out to have me review this, I got excited about it again because, well, it's just a fun design. I love that Chevy hour hand with these square markers and rectangles. It's not too similar to what everyone else is producing. I like that they went for an atypical design, and they accomplished something really spectacular here. Again, at that price, there's really no complaints I have about this piece. The lume is fine. The movement is fine. The case dimensions and styling is really perfect, and that's what makes this a great everyday wear. Now, on that note, I want to provide you all with a wrist shot so you can see what this might look like on your wrist. I did not think that Spinnaker would want to send me another watch. I'm very surprised when this turned up in my mail. If you've seen my other reviews on the channel, you know I've been hypercritical of how they do their production, how they do their pricing. Sometimes the quality just isn't there. And I think for this price, this product, I mean, this is just a home run for the brand. I really do like the Bradner design, price point, everything about this watch is great. If you're interested in Spinnaker at all, this is the one to get. And here it is on my 7¼ inch wrist for all of your admirers. And when you are going to admire it, it's going to look a little something like this. And here is the Spinnaker Bradner on my 7¼ inch wrist, the fun flagship design from the brand. Again, this is my favorite watch from them. This is the design I think they should be going with for future models, you know, just thinner, different variations of this. This is the one to look out for, in my opinion. And there it is on that moss green leather strap. This is the 5062-02, and you know, I'm usually not a fan of bright red straps on my watches. It's a little too sporty for me, and that's what the 5062-01 comes with. stock standard. So if you weren't into that yourself, I can say that, despite me not being a fan of this strap at first, that color tone, I think this is the better neutral color to go for from, the lineup of Spinnakers that will soon be available. And it does pair well with pretty much, everything I've worn. But I think with that color tone being so neutral, it should be fine with whatever you decide to wear this with. And of course, you have the option to switch this up. As a matter of fact, despite its thickness, I think I might throw this on a Phenomenator or Halfston as soon as I take it off this leather strap. Though, you know what? I actually quite enjoy it. So is the Spinnaker Bradner right for you? It's this watch's second time around the block, and if you didn't have an opportunity to pick it up the first time, this is a good chance to get your hands on one. I think this design, again, is the best from Spinnaker. I do wish that they further improved upon this design by making it even thinner. I think that would have, been in the favor of a lot of folks, collectors like myself. We're all sort of migrating towards thinner designs. That's sort of what trips my trigger. I really enjoy a thinner watch case, one that doesn't feel as obstructive on the wrist. However, this is a very fun, playful design. I think it's right for a lot of folks, particularly at that sub $300 mark. If you were looking for a fun, everyday dive watch, a mechanical beater of sorts, and or just a nice watch to own in a one watch collection. If you're just getting into the hobby, I can see this being a great first watch to grab. Again, Sanzo's production issues that the Mark I suffered when I received it, this is really a stellar piece from the brand. So again, I'd like to thank Spinnaker for sending this my way. I've really enjoyed my time with this watch the second time around. And if you enjoyed this video, guess what? You can help support the channel by hitting that like button. Looks a whole heck of a lot like this guy. If you have friends, forums, or groups that are interested in picking up a Spinnaker Bradner, well, guess what? This consumer says yes. But how about you? Do you own a Spinnaker Bradner, either the first generation, or do you plan on getting the second version? Let me know your thoughts on the previous model as opposed to this new one. Do you think you're going to make the upgrade, or would you suggest buying this to your friends? I'd love to know in the comment section down below. Also, if you are new to the channel, guess what? I do watch content monthly, so feel free to slam that subscribe button, and while you're down there, you can hit the little bell icon just next to that to be alerted as to when my videos air. Again, my name is Patrick Marlett, and thank you for the time